All right, let's take a few moments to go over slope. Okay, and slope is basically how fast something is changing. We call it the rate of change. But let's think about basic things. Okay, there's only 4 types of changes that could be happening. Okay? And most of you have seen these, but you get them mixed up easily, especially with positives and negatives within numbers. So I want you to think about basic ideas. Okay? A positive slope, let's think about reading left to right. A positive slope is always climbing. Okay? So as you move left to right, it goes up. All right. That's all you got to remember. When it comes to graphing, if you remember that, you will troubleshoot a lot of the issues. You'll just kind of fix them on their own. A negative slope, well, as we go left to right, it goes down. Okay? So there's my negative slope. Now a zero slope, if you think about this as being the steepness of a line, which basically that's what slope is, how steep is that line, well, zero means it's not steep at all. That means it's flat. It's like I don't have a hill or any kind of slope that I go up or down. Completely flat. That is a zero slope. Now the opposite of that would be an undefined slope. Undefined means it's straight up and down, which means it's so steep that I can't actually measure it. I can't put a value to it because it never moves left or right. It just goes straight up and down. So steep there's no measurement. And it's very common for this and this to be mistaken and reversed and flipped around. Okay, so remember, zero means it never climbs up or down. Undefined means it's so steep I can't actually put a number to it. Now, when we're asked to calculate slope, there's a formula for it, and you can do this conceptually, just in your head, or you can do it by setting up the numbers. And when there's a lot of numbers, especially with negative signs, I recommend setting it up and following the process rather than just trying to do it in my head. Okay, that formula is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Now notice, I'm going to point a couple things out here. The y's, those are my coordinates that tell me how far I go up or down. Okay, so we call that the rise, how far I go up or down. The x's, that tells me do I move over to the left or to the right, how far. We call that the run. Okay, so y's are on top, x's are on bottom. Now those 1's and 2's tend to bother people, so I'm going to tell you what they come from. All I'm going to do is say, hey, guess what? I'm going to make this 0.1, I'm going to make this 0.2. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. This is just for reference point. You'll get the same answer regardless. So this is the x coordinate of my first point and the y coordinate of my first point. This is the x coordinate of my second point and the y coordinate of my second point. Remember, x comes first, just like in the alphabet. Now, if you label them that way, putting them together in the formula really isn't that bad. Okay, let's look to see what goes on top. I'm going to subtract the y values on top. So y2, which is negative 4, minus y1, which happens to be 1. And I do this, but you don't have to. I always put parentheses there to remind myself that I'm subtracting these two values, and those values themselves may also be negative. Now on the bottom, I'm going to have something like this again. Oops. So let's take a look at my x coordinates. x2 is 5, and x1 is negative 3. Now let's take each piece and just look at it separately. What I mean by that is let's just look at the top. Negative 4 minus 1. That means I'm getting more negative. It's going to be negative 5. On the bottom, I have 5 minus negative 3. Remember, when you subtract a negative, it really becomes a positive addition, so it's going to be positive 8. So my answer to this is negative 5/8. And if I think about that line, hey, that's just like this over here. It's a negative answer. I have one negative number in it, which means it's going to be going down 5 units and over 8 units between points. Okay? Down 5 and over 8. So it's going to look like that. And I could easily draw these points right here on a graph and see if it's a negative line that would connect them. So there's the basics of calculating slope.